Should we start with the suspension?
Sure. I was just talking about it earlier because I'm still technically suspended until I think January, and I didn't really realize that until because I was just in Hawaii and I was going to get in the booth to help commentate for during when Tosh surfed, but I'm still not allowed in the commenting booth because they're streaming the content. I don't know how exactly it works, but they're streaming it, so technically it's on their feed. So technically, I'm still banned until next year.
Okay. Well, let's start with the statement that they gave in March 2022.
I never really read it. I'm horrible with emails, so they probably sent it to me and I didn't read it. I would just talk to Devin directly.
Perfect. I'll read it to you for the first time then, and also for listeners to be fully aware of what's going on. They said, quote, Joel Tudor has been suspended following conduct detrimental to the integrity of the WSL per the WSL rule book, which includes a violation of the following provisions: unsportsmanlike conduct, damage to surfing's image, and a verbal assault. The duration of the suspension is currently under review. What were they referring to exactly? What were the actions made?
I think what had happened, there was such a lack of communication for us when the contest ended in Malibu. It's been 2 years, There was like 5 months where they weren't giving us any kind of an answer, which is hard when you're getting close to January. And, for a lot of the people to do it, there's a lot of planning involved because there's not a lot of financial support. So you kind of have to have like advance notice rather than like getting to March and they're like, hey, you have an event next month in Australia or whatever. So, and I was talking to Devin, I grew up with the guy. So we would text each other and go back and forth because he was technically the commissioner. So I would ask him, what's going on? And he was, man, I'm helpless. He's like, I'm sorry. He's like, I'm trying. But I'm like, it's falling on deaf ears. No one's getting back to me, And at the time, there was a lot of like talk of equality going on through their organization, which I thought was kind of ironic. You know what I mean? I was like, wow, that's interesting because we've been around the whole time too, and we're never even in the table of conversation for, things being on level playing field. So we kept going back and forth. And then at the same time, it was during the Pipe Masters, and I was watching all these commercials running with the gals, and it was like Longboard girls and all this stuff. And by coincidence, in the last 2 years where everything was closed down, out of the blue, the WSL started running content of longboard stuff for the first time ever. Like, I was kind of cool. I actually started following it because I was like, wow, they're running clips of my friends, and they ran one of me and Tosh, and I was like, wow, this is interesting. Maybe it's a new step for them. I said, oh, this is awesome. And Devin had just been hired, so I was like, well, I guess maybe there's a change in the way that they view, us being valuable or whatever. And then I was looking at the amount of views, because it's their own self-made media. They have their own 1 million followers that follow it. And I was going, man, are they paying attention to the difference between these clips of like how many people are like watching and liking one as opposed to the other? And it became such a consistent trend. I started asking Devin, he was going, no, I'm noticing. He's like, I'm bringing it up. No one really wants to talk about it. They're kind of in denial. You know what I mean? And that had been building up leading into them starting to, claim equality for the guys and the girls. And then it sparked a deeper thing that went back to when I was a kid. My girlfriend rode for Roxy, and her and her girlfriends kind of like upheld the image of the brand. Do you know what I mean? But the brand, when it would come to delegating the money out, they would give it to Pro Shortboarding, which was hilarious because these other girls were the ones that were selling the image and all this other stuff. And they were literally giving peanuts to the longboard girls. And then I was like, I sat back and I go, well, technically, man, these longboard girls have been getting screwed since then. That's the 90s. Do you know what I mean? Like, not any sort of like equal payment. Later on, Roxy started to kind of take better care of the longboard girls, but not in any comparison to what they were giving to the other side, which was a complete imbalance because if you're looking at overall value and growth in the sport and interest from the outside world, it's all, for the ladies, it's all longboard generated, And I mean, I'm not making this up. You can look it up. I just felt like, man, you're bragging about this. You're actually using these girls in these images, but you're really disrespecting them because you're not paying them equally. They're like not equal in the women's scale. Do you know what I mean? Like, these girls are valuable, but these ones are still unvaluable, but you're still using them to sell imagery to reach the masses because you can't do it on your own. So it sparked this whole, like, should I say something? You know what I mean? And I'm in a situation like, dude, it doesn't matter to me. I didn't compete for 17 years, so it wasn't really like I had anything to lose. And in my son's of age, it's going to be odd being on tour with him. I already stress him out enough when I'm around at contests. Imagine us being on tour together. It'd be a nightmare. And really, it's like my time's kind of up. I just got lucky and got a wild card shot in and won. But I was in a place to like, well, I'm world champ. If I was ever going to use my voice right now, I might as well do it, you know? And I was like, what do we got to lose? They're like telling us we're going to go back to one event and like, let's see if it'll work. So I just started jabbing them, and I can't really say that I was very rude in the jabbing. It was actually pretty funny, I thought. Do
you want me to read it?
Well, the stuff that I did, like the Bugs Bunny commercial, and like, dude, give me some credit, dude. We did some cool stuff. And I thought it was on my end, if you know my sense of humor and how I am, it really was pretty playful. I was being really nice. But bringing up some really valid points that needed to be addressed, because you can't say you're going to pay equally if you've got these other guys. Forget about us, the guys in the longboard thing. We're a different conversation. But in particular with the females, and that's where I was just like, whoa, dude, how are they going to kind of like be bragging like that when you're disrespecting these ladies over here, like majorly disrespecting? And so I said something, and I kept going with it, you know.
You published it on Instagram.
Yeah, dude, that's what social media is for. We got rid of surf magazines. We don't have what we have left are 2 gossip columns. You know what I mean? We have like 2 pages that only pick up stuff that creates like traffic for trauma. You know what I mean? That's basically what surf media is now. There's no more information, or like, it's just articles that get people arguing online, and the more people are on it, traction. And you know what I mean? It's a weird dynamic. It's really strange. So our job is to use our own social media. I'm in my own media. I'm not some huge celebrity. You know what I mean? I'm a dad who's got some followers, but like, I just set it to like reach certain people in hopes that they would, you know, show some respect to a group that's been kicked down for a really long time. And it didn't work.
It didn't work in that it didn't institute change for the WSL? It
didn't work in the sense that the pay came up. We're still getting paid nothing. One of the kids sent me a funny text, because I said something a couple months ago about how like it's costing these guys still money to go, you know, and he wrote me, I'm not going to say who it is, but he was like, you know, even with an event in my backyard and the 2 other ones, he was like, I spent $17,000 to go to all this stuff, and he's like, I made it $6,500. Total.
So he lost money.
Oh, of course. Yeah. And that's always been my argument.
Yeah.
It's very much the same with the shortboard stuff. You don't make much back. You spend like 70 grand to go, and you barely make it all back, but you make it back. You know what I mean? That's the difference. We're paying to go. We're paying to give you content to use.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? Totally. And that part's just kind of insulting. Like, I want my kids to do it for sure, but financially, I don't know if it's worth the money that we could spend for him to go. You could put that a down payment on a house. Totally. You know what I mean? And like, that's more valuable than your WSL world title for the longboarders. Do you know what I mean? It's crazy to think about that.
Well, it's interesting to assess the value of that world title, you know, and I think it had a lot of significance at times, and I'm not sure that it does so much anymore, or it depends on how they manage it. But if it is just one event a year, it has less.
Yeah, you know, it makes it, well, I mean, I won 2 world titles that way? I won 1 world title that way, the first one, and then I got my second one. It was 1 event again. Yeah, I won the second one in 2004. Yeah. It was 1 event, and then the last one was actually like a tour event, which is odd. The 1 year that I'm like barely tried, it was actually a tour, and I won.
But in terms of its importance, like, there are people who have won longboard world titles who still can't maintain sponsorship throughout the rest of the year. You know what I mean? So it's not like that. It's not really a way to make a living, period. If you're going to make a living off longboarding, sponsors are looking at more than just the world title. They're looking at your value to the community, culture shifting, that sort of thing.
Culture shifting, your value, how much you've influenced. Like,
yeah.
You know, I hate that word. God, it's horrible. It's so used a lot. The influence. But the influence thing is really important. Like, that you actually go to like reaching an audience. We always rely on board sales, because for us, we make royalties off of our surfboards.
Yeah.
A lot of people make their own brand vans now and shape their own boards. It's kind of gone backwards. The lack of support from the actual industry has forced a lot of people to shape, which was how the original surf industry started.
Yeah.
Because there's money in longboarding, and in the longboard markup, you can actually make enough shaping by hand to survive. So a lot of the guys, if you look around, are shaping.
Yeah.
You know, and then none of those guys are really competing because, like, again, it's a waste of time. Yeah. Financially, it's just not there. For us, the club events are more fun. My events are more fun because at least we pay for something. You know what I mean? We put you up, we pay for your food, we take you around, all the stuff that's really expensive, renting cars and transportation. You know, we make it more of a party environment where, like, if you do well, you make some money. If you don't, you had a great weekend with your friends in a foreign country.
Right. Well, back to the suspension, the quote that I read from them, their statement, was that specifically related to the Instagram post? Were you suspended for what you wrote in those Instagram posts?
There was such a lack of communication. Like, I never really spoke to anybody except for Devin, and Devin was only getting kind of secondhand information, like emailed to him. He wasn't really getting so it was kind of a strange situation. And then they got my sponsors involved, which you're not really supposed to do. You know what I mean? Like, they actually called my sponsors and got them involved, which was, awkward.
So,
and then I was like getting like third-hand information from them. So it was just sort of like going back and forth because, we have the Triple Crown. And so it was a dicey situation because of,
meaning Vans.
Yeah, our relationship with them. So I had to kind of like be careful because then it got involved in that situation, which I wasn't really intending on having happen. Well, it was more looking out for the better interest of the competitors, but it turned into this big, sticky, tricky situation. So then I had to kind of shut up, and then I got suspended. And then it's just been like a year of just like funny shit. Like, I had to watch Tosh from Huntington down the beach because I couldn't get in the contest area. I could be in the Vans area off to the side, you know what I mean? But I didn't want cameras pointed at me and shit. And so I like hiked down the beach to stay out of the scene. And then in Malibu, I went. Of course, I'm gonna go watch. I'm not gonna watch from home. I went and watched his heats, and then when it was over, I left. I didn't really want to, given the situation, I didn't really want to be there.
Let me ask you though, because from my vantage point when I was watching it, the suspension, you made those Instagram posts. I did not find them particularly offensive, and I thought that they were actually true. And then there was a comment that you made that I don't have the quote of, but it was in the comment section, maybe on your post, maybe on somebody else's post, but it seemed that you were inferring that Jessie Miley Dyer had a potential preferential treatment or friendship of some of the female pro surfers.
Yeah, which for me, whatever. I don't care if you have a friend that's in a particular thing and it benefits them, then fucking that's uncool. You know what I mean? In any situation, right?
Right.
To suspend me over it's kind of fucking gnarly.
So
you know what I mean?
So
and that's where I was kind of sitting back and I'm like, really? What did I say? I didn't say anything. Okay, sure. They just used it as like a loophole to shut me up and get me to stop talking. And because it was gaining traction. People were talking about it and posting and saying shit and writing stuff all over their deal. And the best way to do that is to just, if you want to get rid of something, you just shut them up. It's a trend nowadays. Do you know what I mean? It's a real thing. Like, you have an issue, so you just cancel them and shut them out. And I didn't really get canceled. They just got to
from their
people that were in a position that could tell me to stop talking, and I did. I'm not going to fucking lose my job over it. Well, you know what I mean? I'll fight for you guys, for sure for the longboard kids, but I'm not going to go to that particular, and I have too much at stake with my own events, you know what I mean? That we've been working on for over decades. So when it got to that point, I was like, no. Right. I'm not
it just seemed like to me that they didn't cancel you or they didn't suspend you for the initial Instagram posts, which were about the organization, the WSL. Then when there was a comment made about somebody specifically within the WSL, that's when the suspension came. That was what the timeline was as I witnessed it. Their statement that they made was referring to the public Instagram post that you made about the organization. But when I was looking at it, I'm like, no, they weren't canceling about the organization. They were canceling it because somebody took it personal. That's what it looked like to me.
100%. It was taken personal. And it's like, don't take it personal. It's your job to represent the league. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or whatever it is. Take some criticism, for Christ's sake.
Yeah.
I've taken it my whole life.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it's not that big of a deal. And I really wasn't being like super rude. I had legit arguments to make. Do you know what I mean? Like, this isn't like hot air. I actually have some pretty valid points that you should acknowledge, because as a governing body and an organization, your goal is to reach a broader audience. Like, the more people watching it, the more of a success it is, the more that your sponsors feel like they're getting something back, right? So if you're ignoring this huge potential to show something and you don't, then that's you're not growing your brand. You're purposely like keeping it.
Well, the organization, any organization, should never get their feelings hurt. The organization should be looking at it like you said, which is this is creating conversation. Whether it's like, there's no such thing as bad press, right? And so this is creating conversation, and they should leverage that. So the organization should never get the feelings hurt. If somebody within the organization gets the feelings hurt and makes a decision for the organization that then stops traffic, that's problematic.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. I started my own events because I didn't like where they were going in 2005. I just stopped, right? And then like 2 years later, Vans said, hey, let's do these events. I did my own thing for a really long time. It gained so much traction and so many little pop-ups around the world that were copying it that they had to go back and reevaluate their rules because they weren't getting any new blood in their organization. No Justin Quintals and no Harrisons and anyone partaking, right? So they had to go in, and it had nothing to do with me. I had nothing to do with them. But the success of my events forced them to go and have to make some adjustments to get some new blood to come in. They did. They hired Devin, which is funny. They didn't hire like a dude that competed with us. They got a guy that I grew up with down the street. You know what I mean? His course is going to be calling me for every little, like, we grew up together, and I have a ton of experience running events. So you would think he would call me. You know what I mean? And my events have put longboarding in a different view the first time, where we kind of had like some respect for a really long time, because the way that they did it wasn't working. You know what I mean? It's just odd that our little events had some kind of like influence on their stuff. Do you understand what I'm saying?
100%.
And then when I so you're indirectly taking from my success. Do you know what I mean? And then when I speak up and say something that's totally valid and you could have listened to rather than listening to it, what did you do?
Somebody got their feelings hurt.
And they went deep and called, they went and tattled and ratted me out, and which is really chicken shit. Call me if you got a problem.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you.
I mean? Like,
what you, at the very beginning, you said maybe they emailed me and I didn't respond to the email. Did anybody try to resolve this personally or privately?
No one ever called me, which is hilarious, because the people like Graham Stapleberg and those guys, get out of here, man. I've known you for 30 years. I've been on the WSL since I was 15. I'm 47 this year. Well, it was ASP back then.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But like, I've been around a long time. I've known all of these guys. I've known the judges. I've known, like, come on. You can't pick up you can't get my number from Devin and call me. Well, like, dude, what's going on? Like,
it seems like
Graham and
Well,
like,
it seems like Graham would. It seems like there'd
call me up, dude. You get my number. How hard is it to call me?
Well, it seems like it wasn't Graham's decision.
Yeah,
because Graham would, right?
I know he would call. I feel like, I hope so. You know what I mean? I've known the guy forever, but it was an awkward way to handle it. You can't say it was awkward for me. We don't have magazines anymore. They do an interview. If they're not responding to emails and they're not responding to the dude who's the head of the longboard portion of it, what else am I supposed to do?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it wasn't really for me. I was doing it for everyone else that was fired up and excited to compete because of all these promises and different things. So I didn't get on camera and say, this fucking tour sucks, fucking, you know what I mean? None of that shit. I jabbed them. I had a really talented artist do a commercial for me. I had some like funny shit done. And I used my verbiage, which I use on everything, to kind of like gain some traction, and hopefully some people would write them. Because in this day and age, like cancel culture, they hate negative press. You know what I mean? And I thought that would actually be a way to get it. But whatever. I mean, and again, the suspension, it's like, boo-hoo. I didn't compete this year. I didn't compete for 17 years. I went straight back to the club events. I competed in the over 40 division this year like 4 times.
Well, the insane thing is, if they actually allowed you to compete in the events after this debacle, it would have driven more traffic than they've ever seen before.
100%. I would have liked to have competed. The waves were actually good this year at Malibu. It was terrible the year that we did it. I mean, it looked good, but on a Malibu standard, it was pretty bad. But it is what it is. We had a cool year. We had our events, a handful of them. The duct tape that I had to do for them, I mean, that's the other thing. I had to volunteer my permit. That was supposed to be a regular duct tape that would have like showcased like California talent that actually surf a particular way. But we volunteered it so that there would be a tour stop, you know, and then, you know, obviously things change because it has to fall underneath their rule set and how they put the competitors in. So we had to invite a lot of people that I would have normally not had at my events.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, you lost some control.
Just because they don't really support that particular style of surfing. But whatever. We're big kids. We sucked it up and we had them come and they all had a good time. We threw the party for them and put them up in hotels. And I let them experience what it's like to go to one of my events. You know what I mean? And so that way they could all walk away and go, oh, wow, I can't talk shit anymore. You know what I mean? They actually got to do it and understand like what we do. And obviously they didn't get to experience all the cool shit of like having me on the mic and you know, the funny shit that we say during the heats and the encouraging to drop in on each other and the doubles rides, all that stuff kind of went away. Mm-hmm. Actually, what's funny is in the final, there was a lot of stuff going on at Malibu in the final event. That ride of Harrison and Connie was a tribute to our events. You know what I mean?
I could see that.
And it was like their way of kind of like, I mean, no one could say my name. Do you know what I mean?
Was there a mandate to not say your name?
Yeah, you weren't allowed to say my name. You weren't even allowed to say it on the webcast.
It's insane.
Yeah, all the webcast guys that work for him came up and told me.
Insane.
Yeah, you're not allowed to say my name. You know, so that part, I got my final laugh when they took off together because that's a symbol of our contest. We ride doubles and do crossovers and pay each other for that shit. So in the end, I was kind of like, oh, you shut me up. But the coolest part of that whole final was, that was for us. So,
let me ask, why'd you delete the posts?
I had to.
Why?
Because I was told to.
By whom?
By my, you know, the people that are my employers. You know what I mean? It wasn't helping me any by keeping it up because it was just creating fucking negative traffic. It wasn't negative. It was actually positive conversation, but it was negative in their direction. So in my best interest, I deleted it. I mean, it was up. You all saw it. I would wish I could still keep it up just for like memory's sake.
I mean, it exists. People screenshot it.
It's around. People have it. Yeah, they have
it. Do you regret deleting it?
No, it served its purpose personally. I mean, I feel like it did its thing, and I was able to save their tour. It'll be the first time ever that a world champion sacrificed himself so that the kids could have. But I mean, you got to remember, I sacrificed myself at 28 or whatever, and for the last 10 years, I cheerleaded for an entire generation that I could have beat the entire time. Do you know what I mean?
I did.
And I didn't because I had such an exceptional childhood through Takayama and Nat Young and all these people that I felt that it was my turn to quit taking it all in and stealing the fucking limelight. You know what I mean? Because I was the only one that was getting paid and to do all these things. It's the difference between longboarding and shortboarding. Right. There hasn't been a share of the pie. I was the only one that really ever succeeded. Do you know what I mean? And so it's a lot of animosity from that particular branch. If you're in shortboarding, everybody ended up buying houses. It's just like a normal thing. Longboarding was pretty rare. It wasn't until I quit competing and worked with Vans to make these events that it actually became like, you know, Quintal bought a house, Harrison bought a house, you know what I mean? Pickle bought a house, Perch bought a house. Like all these things became possible through the duct tape success and giving them a platform. You know what I mean? And fuck yeah. Like, I feel like I succeeded. You know what I mean? I had to like quit competing and be world champ. I could have won fucking 5 world titles if I wanted to. But I had to, like, at some point do something. Otherwise, it was just going to be the me show. You know what I mean? And that shit sucks. Yeah. I don't want to live a narcissistic existence where it's just, I'm the only fucking thing that's important. And, you know, the duct tape's still going. That's a fucking rad thing. I still have a job.
Well,
I still get to do this 4 times a year and bring in new talent every, you know, shit's rad.
So that's why I ask though if you regret deleting it, because it's like if the duct tape is the legacy and that is what you feel great about, and then this past year you're forced to include surfers that maybe you wouldn't, you're forced to sit down the beach, then they're not only jeopardizing, not only is your world title canceled, but they're canceling the legacy to a degree.
Yeah. they can't cancel me, dude. I was famous before fucking Instagram. You know what I mean?
You know what I'm saying, though.
I know, but I try to tell that to people all the time. I was like, nowadays, dude, you're famous because you can like put a clip together and make funny shit. It was like, once upon a time, you actually had to be talented. Do you know what I mean? And I already accomplished a ton of stuff before some stupid app for a cell phone. I don't really take it that serious. I know people think I do. Dude, Instagram for me is a joke. We have no media left anymore. So I literally use it to like show people like cool old surf stuff. And I mean, it's the truth because it's everybody celebrates themselves. It's almost kind of fucking corny. It's got to a point where like we live in this me. It was all that I see existence. And it's like, I didn't come up like that.
Yeah.
I came up around some rad dudes that never celebrated themselves ever. You had to pry the fucking information out. You know what I mean? Like stuff that like is like groundbreaking shit that you're like, how did you never tell me that? You know, and it's just like they just didn't care because they were still doing cool stuff.
Yeah.
And I dig that.
Yeah.
And I try and honor those dudes. And you know, surfing needs a little bit of history, less claiming, more information. That's just where I'm at right now. And I got kids. You're asking me why, and that's the real thing. Like, I'm sure at some point Tosh wants to like pursue, or even Judah might. What I don't need is anyone holding grudges because not everybody understands my sense of humor or the angle that I'm taking to get it. And sometimes people's pride working for a brand or an organization will get in the way of the information that I'm giving them, and they'll hold those grudges that can cost you a 0.5 in a heat later. Or, you know what I mean?
Once you got to
remember that shit, dude. These guys are petty motherfuckers, and they'll hold that stuff to you when it comes down to it, to giving you that score or whatever it is. So you have to like keep that. I'm aware of it.
Yeah, and it makes sense that you would make that accommodation in light of your children. But what I'm just surprised to hear you say, because I think that your conviction was right in the first place. Like the thing that started this whole thing about equality and the hypocritical nature of the marketing was spot on. And if they had listened, it would have benefited their business. And somebody took it personal, made a decision that I think would hinder the business. And then somewhere down the road, I see you deleting the post and you canceling and accommodating and things like that. And I'm like, what I'm concerned about is that the people who are making those decisions now for the organization will be gone in 3 years. They're going to take a job from some other corporation and they will be gone.
They'll be gone.
And if they drove professionals, competitive surfing off into a ditch, they're just going to toss the keys back and be like, hey guys, we're moving on. See you later. And your conviction still has value in that scenario. And so why not just write out the conviction until those people who are way less invested move on?
Yeah, I was bummed Devin quit. That sucked.
Yeah.
Because he was the best person for the job and the most qualified and well-spoken and can like articulate what needs to be said. You know what I mean? I'm a smart ass and I'm not really the best person for that. People nowadays are really sensitive, so it's like my sense of humor might not work. I just felt that it was in the bigger picture. If they ever need me, I'm around. I don't really care. You can suspend me. I don't really take it personal. I feel like our mission was accomplished to try and like at least get the guys to be able to have a tour for this year, next year. There's gonna be one next year. So if I sacrifice myself for that, great. When these dorks running it right now are gone, I'm still gonna be around. And I'm still sitting with a ton of information, and you can call me at any time. You know, I'm sure one of my kids will be competing on it. And I'm always here. My love for surfing goes beyond my suspension, and I'm still here if they ever need it. You know, and the smartest thing they could ever do is listen to the one person who's had the most success running longboard contests.
Totally.
I know what the fuck I'm doing. I've been doing this my whole life, competing on all levels, and I studied the same way I studied surfboards and our history and all the shit. I studied all the fun parts of the contest and what was wrong and what wasn't, and where people were too big for their britches and where the egos got in the way and all that shit. And you know, one thing about having contests, it's a philanthropy effort. You are not going to make any money. People have to remember that. You can make a little bit. I mean, you might make a couple grand for the weekend or whatever, but you have to go into it knowing that. You're not going into it to walk away. If you're going to think you're going to make money off of surfing, you're going to go broke every time.
Well, I think that's the WSL doesn't make any money either.
Well, yeah, but they've got this business model that's ridiculous, and it's $1 million tents. You know what I mean? On a beach, they charge for all the shit that's just honestly for one with the way our coastlines are eroding, and like the environmental impact of those gigantic. I don't know what the hell it is they make, and they put all these places is ridiculous. We don't need it. We used to run huge events with tiny ass scaffoldings, and you know what I mean? You don't need 20 security guards and all this shit. You need 2. You don't need, like, it's kind of this huge flex, and we don't really have an industry to back it up.
Yeah.
And we need to like pump the brakes and come down and just downsize and make it cool again. Don't make it bigger. You're making it bigger and it's becoming lamer. Is lamer a word?
Yeah.
I don't know if it's a word. I
hope
think
it is.
I mean,
Sounds like
I just made one. If it's not, it's the truth. It's losing like anything cool to try and reach the stadium audience, and we're not a stadium sport. We're way cooler than that. We don't need to have that kind of like giant scene to be successful. You know what I mean? And that's where people have to kind of like, you know, Rabbit Bartholomew did it right back in the day when he made the focus be about the waves as opposed to, you know, that stadium thing. And there was some success there for a couple of years. But when you bring in people that don't surf, you can't expect it you have to have, it has to be a lifetime passion, not just like an exercise that you got into in your 40s. You know what I mean? To really be in charge of our culture and like how this shit's presented to like a bigger picture, you need to know what's up. That's really important.
If you were offered the job as commish, would you take it?
Fuck yeah, I'd take it. I'd fix all this shit too. Hey, laugh all you want.
I'm not laughing. I'm laughing that
you
you're
are
so
laughing, but I'm saying for the people that get a chuckle out of that, I know what I'm doing. You know
I
what
agree.
I mean? Like that's the funny part. I've been doing this for a while, and people think it's hard. It's actually very, very easy to do. You just have to make it not be about you. You know what I mean? And like step back and
run in good waves.
Yeah, run a good event. You know what I mean?
I mean, literally running good waves.
Yeah, running good waves, run a good event. Know how to read a swell forecast.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? Do things that are not about sponsors, that are about surfers. You know, surfers first.
Yeah.
Kind of deal. And don't try and copy any other sports. That's where we're screwed up.
Totally.
We actually were an association of surfing professionals and we became a league. I don't know how that was a smart, you know what I mean? Numbers and so, dude, who cares what number you are? Win a contest.
Totally.
You know what I mean? Like that's the part that I never understood. Whatever. I'm probably not going to understand it.
Yeah.
But I gave it a good shot and I tried and you know, we'll see what happens. My kid's in the Pipe Masters today.
Yeah, I know. Congrats on that.
So, yeah, that's cool.
It's exciting.
And also, here's some other funny shit. Like, dude, they got rid of Devin. They forced him out to put him in a situation where he quit because it was just too frustrating having to just like sign off emails. It's like, dude, I actually have something to say that can benefit the competitors. You know, I'm not just going to sign an email, which is what they were expecting him to do. And, you know, he quit. But then they hired a kid that's most famous competitive moments winning one of my contests. Shit's funny.
Yeah,
you know
it is
what I mean?
funny.
Like, it's kind of funny.
There's a lot of humor.
It's pretty humor. Like, I'm sitting back and I'm like, really? I mean, I love Kira, but, you know, like, that's like, what the fuck?
So how has she made changes to the tour then?
No.
Oh, okay.
None at all.
Okay.
And what in that kind of a situation, how are you going to? Do you know what I mean? Like, if you don't have any experience running events, how the hell are you going to be able to? And if you're dealing with a group of people that don't want to hear anything and they just want you to like say yes to everything, that's not really in the benefit of any of us. Do you know what I mean?
Totally.
And I'll be the first to stand up and go, you know, you're fucked. That's like not right. You can't do that. No, that wave sucks. No, that's fucking 3 rights. No, that wave only breaks when it's 6 feet. I've been everywhere. I've surfed all these waves. So it's like, you maybe listen to some of us. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That know what the fuck we're talking about. You know what I mean?
Well,
and that knowledge is always available. You can always pick a phone up and call me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, again, I don't know if you've noticed, I'm not dying to get back on tour. I wasn't dying in the last 17 years to jump back on there. I just was just sitting and I was really bored the last couple of years because there wasn't anything going on.
Yeah.
And Devin reached out and was like, hey, man, do you want to come to Australia? You know? And I went on a fluke and I ended up winning. You know what I mean? I literally went on a family vacation with my kids. I ended up winning the contest. And then that's when I was like, oh, God, I guess I'll make another stab at it. You know?
why, considering those posts were deleted and you kind of stopped commenting about the whole debacle, why did you decide to discuss it now? Why now?
Why not? It just didn't, no one really knew what happened. I had to say something. You know what I mean? Like, no one really knows exactly what happened. It's exactly what happened. I jumped in front of the bus for everybody to be able to have a tour the next 2 years. And, you know, it's funny because there's a lot of guys on that tour that are kind of left over from that, like, high performance, like 90s thing that are pissed that, like, all these, and it's not even really changes. That's the part that's really funny. They think there's all these changes. They just changed one verbiage from performance to style. Kind of like in the shortboard thing, how they took the style part out and they made it, they put it back in ours. That was the only difference. It's still a 50-50 category, and they just said with an emphasis on style, you know. Guys were like, you changed the rules, man. How you? I was like, dude, I haven't competed since 2005. You know, I have my own thing. Like, how did I change the rules?
Yeah.
I didn't do anything. They just went in and realized that the only way they were going to get the Quintals and the Harrisons and the Connies is if they did something to, like, make not an adjustment, but just like they throw a bone a little bit. You know what I mean? Do something that's going to entice these guys to want to come and compete.
Can you sum up what would be the proper way to judge longboard surfing? I mean, I think it's hard to even argue that there is an objective way to judge surfing at all, but what is the proper way to judge longboard surfing?
I kind of feel like that the way that they have it is pretty. Look, in any contest, nothing's perfect. There's always going to be heats that people think one guy won and the other person didn't. I'm well aware of that, right? And even sometimes I'll watch a heat and I'll think this guy won and that one did. It's really hard to be a judge, right? Because the balance of scores, someone's personal choice from the next guys can be so different. And the highs and lows make the averages strange, right? A lot of times the computer doesn't give the best person doesn't win. Do you know what I mean?
I do.
It's
weird, subjective. It just is.
It really is. It rounds the stuff out, and it just doesn't. That's why we don't really have computer scores in the duct tape, except for when they have it at the U.S. Open. You know, and it's awkward because I prefer not having scoring, just because it forces that computer finish. Do you know what I mean? As opposed to, like, leaving it in the hands of the judges to the end. And then, I don't know. That's just me. I think I just kind of went off on a tangent there.
No, that's okay.
I get that a lot. I'm starting to. I see how when you get older, you start to, like, lose your train of thought.
Tangents are perfect for the podcast.